Welcome to the Athlete Insights podcast with host Paul G.
Everybody, it's Paulie here. So I just want to give you a quick introduction to an amazing journalist. If you aren't aware of him, his name's Eric McFarland, and he just actually won the BWA Journalist of the Year Awards. Congratulations and welcome, Eric.
Well, I do have to correct you, Paulie. Sorry, I was Commentator of the Year.
Commentator of the Year, there we go.
The Journalist of the Year. So I want to give credit where credit's due there. But no, thank you very much for having me. Sorry.
No, please give a shout out. Who was the journalist of the year?
It was Chris Pike.
Chris Pike. So shout out to Chris. And you were Commentator of the Year. So my
that's correct. Yeah.
But next year, it may be Journalist of the Year next year.
No. I don't know about that. I'm still reeling over the Commentator of the Year. But it's great to be on. Thanks for having me as I'm listening to the shows. And I really like this, getting into the mindset of these athletes. And now the guy who just watches the athletes can give you a bit of a heads up into my mindset.
So we're going to start from the very beginning. Can you share your journey into, commentary and journalism and sort of who inspired you to pursue this passion?
Yeah, look, I've always loved sport. As a kid, my old man used to say I'd have worms in my butt because I was always moving, always wanting to play sport, watch sport. And in the 90s, we were sport for choice.
Yes.
With, these iconic athletes. And then these iconic athletes in their moments had these commentators who underscored it beautifully. That was across basketball, footy, cricket, pro wrestling, the sort of things that I grew up on in the 90s. So I've always been drawn to it. And luck would have it, I stayed involved in local sports mainly, mostly cricket, playing and volunteering at Warwick Greenwood Cricket Club. Yes. And then I sort of, as the story would probably go for most of my life or career or whatnot, I fell into pro wrestling. I helped out with marketing for a local pro wrestling company. There was an opening that happened to come up to commentate with my good friend Adam Parry. And it just sort of went from there. We did that for a few years. Adam used to commentate in the NBL1 West. Now he's doing a great job at Claremont Footy Club as their sort of game day host. And he mentioned to me back in 22 that the league was looking for commentators. And he said, why not give it a go? You've been doing the wrestling commentary, so you know how to talk to an audience. You know how to, present yourself in the best way. So I thought, give him a message, see what happens. Got a trial. And I had one game at Warwick, and Brian and his team said, look, would you like to stay on and do special comments? And after one game, I was like, mind-blowing. It was incredibly flattering and humbling. And I guess them and the league has been stuck with me since.
I wouldn't say stuck with you. We're very lucky to have you. Is there anything you recall from that first game that stands out?
Not so much the first game, but I was just speaking to Squin, Jacinta Gonvin from Eastcott Game and Shooting the Breeze, and we're talking about the first time we did nationals together, and that was still my first season calling, and I was saying to her that she was someone who'd played at the level before, so I remember being a bit nervous having a call with her and being the play-by-play. So I sort of hid behind, trying to make more like references, jokes, and sort of not get too deep into the technical side of things or really that descriptive part of it.
Yes.
And I think now, if I look back at the first 6 months of me doing it, I think I lent a lot on that, and now getting a little bit more comfortable. I'm still, not going to be great in terms of the tactics compared to some of the people who've lived and breathed basketball their entire life. I mean, 3 years ago, I thought a moving screen was an option on the house I was building. So, I just find that the first year was really not necessarily nervous in terms of talking, but nervous in offering opinion and really getting into the weeds about basketball. But now, since then, I've been not afraid to do that and sort of try and put my own flavor into it as well.
Now, I just want to touch something that you've mentioned there. Jacinta from Shooting the Breeze podcast. She is a phenomenal journalist and member of the community. Yeah. Just a quick shout out to her, and I encourage everyone to listen to her podcast. But so Jacinta is also a great person within the community, but also I want to shout out to Jake from Fast Break Radio. Now, you recently had an interview with him following your award night. Tell us how that went and what was it like to be interviewed for the first time?
Yeah, I got to say, and even though, I love you to bits, Paulie, I don't really like having the shoe on the other foot, to be honest. I like to do the interviewing and the questions. So it was a little bit jarring at first, but Yeah, he just asked me a couple of quick questions. I did say to him I'll come on his show as long as it wasn't about me, and then he immediately made it about me. So I had to
He's amazing.
grit my teeth through that. But he was an absolute sweetheart.
Yeah.
And then we just had a bit of a chat about the men's season. So yeah, no, it's. I don't, as much as I've got like 37 million social media accounts and I'm probably posting every day and living too much on my device. So I genuinely get uncomfortable talking about me. So
No, that's fair
I'm
enough.
glad
Now,
I'm glad he moved the topic to the bowlers themselves.
have you both had a chance to commentate together?
Yeah, we called last Friday actually
Oh,
at the
wow.
Senate. So yeah, and unlike himself, there's so many great callers in our league and so many people that have fun just being around and commentating with.
Yes.
Josh Van Kampen,
Oh,
who
brilliant.
I'm calling with this weekend. Andrew Canyon up at
Oh,
the
yes.
Redbacks as well.
Big
And
shout
look, I
out.
could. Rick Morecambe, the fact that you
Oh,
get to commentate with a 6-time championship coach and
champion.
just listening
Yes.
to his experiences,
And his
and
insight.
I
Yeah.
I don't want to go through everyone because it would just be too long, but there's just some really great people, and I think when you're commentating, you're sort of your own team, and it's really important to find that groove and find what works with the different players each time. And it's great. We've got such a unique mix of different experiences, different approaches, and it's just a really good team, not just in Western Australia, but across the country. There's some
Nationally,
really good
yes.
callers.
Absolutely. Now we'll move ahead a couple of questions because I want to keep the interview short and our time is of essence. How
Yep.
do you prepare for a major event or game, wrestling match, or what sort of research do you do beforehand?
For me, it's very much I start with the stats. That's my foundation. I grew up, really enamored by the likes of Bruce McAvaney. He had these stats ready to go, and he would like have this enthusiasm when he was bringing it up, and then he could bring into context why he was bringing that stat up. So I always start with the stats. That's the foundation. I'm a
Yes.
big nerd for stats at the best of times, whether it's the basketball commentary, whether it's my very, very amateur cricket career. I just love looking at stats. But
Love
from
it.
a basketball perspective and commentary, I try and just absorb them. I enter them in to like a spreadsheet that I've got, even though I probably won't refer to every single one of those stats. It just helps me sort of absorb it. Some people learn by doing. I learn by just writing, and that sort of makes it sink in my brain.
Absolutely.
And then once I've got those stats, I'll probably use maybe 10% of them throughout a call, but I'll dive deeper into the actual players or the teams. What's the history? What do the stats actually mean? Is it a career best year? Have they improved? Have they gone backwards? Numbers for the sake of numbers don't
Yes.
really help the viewer. But if you can sort of relay what those numbers mean, what the trend is, why that's important, why I'm bringing that up, then you can hopefully add that value to the call and to the whole presentation. So first of all, I start with the stats, absorb those, then I'm looking at articles, I'm looking at the socials from the clubs and the players, and I just become a bit of a sponge. And as I've got more comfortable in the league, which is still a work in progress, now I've started to reach out to players and coaches for their thoughts. And I think when you're able to intersperse all that knowledge,
Yes.
that prepares you, has more layers on your call. There might be, oodles of A4 pieces of paper in front of me, but it's more so than still staying in the moment and just sort of hoping that what I've been talking about with players or what I've learned from the stats or databases like Eurobasket and things like that, that hopefully comes out in the call naturally because it's dug in the recesses of my brain somewhere.
I love it. I love it. Now, we'll move straight across to what advice would you give to someone wanting to start out in sports journalism or commentary today? I mean, I know you're still
Yep.
new in the sense of basketball, but not in the sense of journalism and commentary. And I mean, people can check out your Twitter, your Facebook for all the interviews you've done with athletes throughout the time, the year, and so forth. What
Yep.
advice would you have?
Well, first of all, the best ability is reliability. So be punctual, be polite, be courteous, arrive early. The sooner you can get to something that you're calling, the sooner people don't have to worry about whether you're not going to rock up or not. And also you get a feel of the atmosphere. You kind of get into game mode yourself. And I guess if you're someone who's more social than I am as well, you can go and talk to people as well. So I think, first of all, just being punctual, being there and being kind. I know that sounds so silly and so basic, but that's your first port of call.
I love it.
Ask questions, get as much information as you can. Even if it's for things you think like you can get different perspectives from people, get an understanding of how other people see the game. And then that way you can tailor what you're calling. You don't always want to call the game as if you're doing it for your own viewing, because otherwise you're doing it to an audience of one and you're doing your audience a disservice.
I love
mistakes, they're human. Use them to learn from them. So, Jay, she says to me that I'm a bit of a perfectionist, and then I'm always like, oh, I stumbled over this word, or that I, called someone a wonderful player for like 6 times in the same quarter. But I think it's not a bad thing to identify the mistakes, but don't dwell on them, like, which I still struggle with at times, but learn from them. And like, for example, Nationals last year, I think I called a coach by the wrong name for the entire game. Now I know, because of that, just to double check the stat sheets that we get. So don't just rely on that early version that you get. Just make sure and go, wait a minute, is that actually, John Smith there? But I don't know. And the last thing I would say is accept feedback. If somebody gives you feedback, don't look to go, oh yeah, but, or I thought, or, I think Damian Slater once said this to me, and if not, shout out to a great coach in Damian Slater. He's a pro wrestler and does world beater wrestling, absolute legend of a man. But he says, oh, I hope he says, if I'm remembering correctly, but the majority of the time, if somebody's giving you feedback, they're giving you that feedback to help. Because if they really hated you and didn't want you to succeed,
tell you.
They absolutely wouldn't say a thing to you. Like they go, oh, this guy can keep making that same mistake and he's just going to crash and burn. But even if that person is, someone who might be a little petty and hold a grudge or whatever, there might still be a sliver of good advice in what they're saying to you that, something you don't recognize about whatever it is you do, whether it's commentary, whether it's basketball, whatever it is, something that you might not recognize. Photography, absolutely.
Yes.
So if they're saying it from a place of, maybe ill will, they go, okay, well, yeah, the reason they're doing it's not great. But they still notice something that maybe isn't up to par. So, I can still learn from that, accept the feedback, consider it, and then apply what you can work with into whatever your skill is.
I think that's great advice for life, let alone just being a journalist or commentator. Eric, we need to put some of that on a T-shirt. That was pathetic almost. We're going to
get old. The grey beard's coming in. I'm getting wiser.
Wise, not old. Experienced is the way we put it. Now I'll move on. We've got 2 last questions before we head off. What are some of the ethical responsibilities that you believe that you have as a journalist and commentator?
It's a tough one, because I was thinking about this when to peek behind the curtain when you gave me the questions to have a look at. And I sort of tried to look at it how wide or how deep do you go into that? Because there's a lot of talk about ethics in sports, and really the big issue in the last, maybe 10, 15 years has been sports washing. And I struggle with that, because I couldn't say to you or to anyone listening along right now, if you said, hey, Eric, I'd like you to go to the kingdom of magical tyrannical land to go commentate this game, that I'd be able to say, you know what, I can't do that, like, because of my ethical responsibilities, because I'm someone who believes that sport is very much a separate thing. It brings people together of all cultures, all backgrounds. No matter what you believe, sports is great unifier when it's used in a positive sense. So I always struggle with, the thinking about the ethical responsibilities of someone who works in sport, because I'd hate to begrudge someone who, flew off to this, mythical country, whatever it is. You can fill in the blank with wherever you want to think that I might be implying.
Yes.
But people still just want to share the game and share experiences with people at every level of a country or of a background or a people's, where it brings them genuine joy. So I think from a bigger point of view, it's a hard thing to really wear as an ethical responsibility, but from a personal belief and bringing it back in, I think, at the end of the day, if you can look at yourself in the mirror and say, you passed the good person test in terms of what you're sharing, what you're talking about, some people talk about ethical responsibilities in terms of, you've asked me as well, balancing your own personal opinions and professional duties. It's like your responsibility, if we stray a little bit from ethical, is to provide a great experience for the viewer. It's not hard to find what teams I support. I literally wear them and my heart on my sleeve. And I think that's actually a good thing. I think if I'm so passionate about whether it is the Bulldogs, the Senators, whomever, then that when I'm calling a game for, well, more specifically the Sennies, that I'm going to call it objectively. Like
Yes.
I'm just going and that says more to my ability and my professionalism that I'm not going to be doing the we or the us.
Yes.
One of my
Yes.
biggest bugbears of a commentator is when they say, "Oh, we've got to do this," and it happens at the top level, especially cricket these days. And talking about the '90s, we had the great commentary teams like Richie Benaud at the helm.
Yes.
And now you're hearing like, "We need to do this." Us, and the we or us when you're commentating is your commentary team. You don't have a horse in the race. So
Yes.
I think from a responsibility as a journalist or commentator is, yeah, absolutely, wear your team colors with pride. Like, absolutely tell people who you go for. But when you're in game mode, you're in game mode. And it's, again, what I said before, you're not an audience of one, you're talking to a wide audience, and you've got to, make sure it's enjoyable for whoever is tuning in.
I love it. No, that's perfect. We're going to finish up with one last question.
Yep.
What has been the most rewarding aspect of your career so far? Because there's still big things to come. You're only just getting started. But what's been the most rewarding aspect so far?
Look, it'd be very easy to say the award at the Basketball WA Gala, because it's recognition from peers and from people who probably have more basketball knowledge in their little pinky finger than I've obtained so far. So that was very rewarding and very flattering. But to me, this is going to sound cliche and maybe insincere, but it is genuine. To me, the most rewarding aspect about my career in sports journalism and commentary is getting to know the people, whether that was the people at pro wrestling. I've met some of my best friends for life, and now they live all around the country, all around the world. And now in basketball, getting to know people around the clubs and around the land, like people like yourself. We've mentioned Squin, Tomo over in Melbourne.
Yes.
The players themselves who are so gracious with their time, their insight, and some of them, even though I'm not a big, hey, come add me on Facebook sort of guy, because I'm trying to not be on Facebook as much, but some that I would genuinely consider friends now. And
yes,
like I mentioned, some of the commentators, but the beauty about NBL1 West really is that community atmosphere. And I'm talking people like Adrian Holmes, who's won Volunteer of the Year award. And you've seen him around if you've been to an NBL1 game. Laurie Lim, who sets up all the production at the Senators and mans the camera for the KO games. Matt Bailey. I said on Jake's podcast, his pedanticness can annoy me at times, but I think that's, again, passion, and the fact that he actually cares enough to go and get correct pronunciation, give you correct information.
I love Matt.
And be so particular about it. Yeah. And, sometimes I might say smart aleck thing back to him, but deep down, just admiration for his commitment to it. So
Matt actually, sorry to interrupt,
Matt
corrected me calling an athlete the incorrect name for a full season.
Yeah,
he saved me the embarrassment. I owe Matt a big time.
Yeah, no, he's an absolute
sorry,
absolute
please continue.
ripper. No, but that's what I'm saying. Like, the most rewarding aspect is it sounds like when they're doing a parody of like an after school special, like, and the real lesson here was the friends we made along the way. But it genuinely is.
Yes.
It genuinely is the most rewarding thing. And for me to be part of this community and have been part of wrestling communities and been part of just people that have been involved with local cricket, whatnot, that's always going to be the most rewarding thing. You can't always just rely on money, awards or whatnot, but you can always rely on mates that you make.
Absolutely. And on that, I think we'll finish it up with, yes, the basketball community in WA is like one big family. Eric, thank you so much for your time. Now, obviously, you're trying to take some time off Facebook, but where can people follow you? You're commentating for the NBL1. They can follow you at the cricket.
Oh, please don't follow. I had a terrible year last year at the cricket, so don't look at the stats there.
Okay.
But now that I've been involved, I should probably more professionalize my handles and whatnot. But on the Twitter, the Instagram at Colonel Bod, which is a shout out to the fact that my fitness regime is more fueled by fried chicken than really any sort of commitment to macros or anything like that.
Whoever says there's something wrong with that,
if you want to follow anything, and as you said, NBL1 West for the off season, the NBL1.
Fantastic. And whoever says there's something wrong with fried chicken, they need to go to jail. There is nothing wrong with fried chicken. It is amazing. Okay, I think that's our warning that the time is going to go. Listen, Eric, once again, thank you for your time.
You've just listened to the Athlete Insights podcast.